The command forbade German soldiers and officers to have intimate relations with women in the occupied territories. The reason was the total obsession of the Nazi top brass with the purity of Aryan blood. But the lower the rank of a German soldier, the less he was concerned about ideology. Most German soldiers did not care about Hitler or Stalin. They did not think about how their nation would blossom after the conquest of new lands. There was a much more tangible trophy than the bright future the Führer promised: the women. They were available here and now, as long as the villains had a machine gun in their hands. Historian Boris Kovalev discovered in one of the archives an order from Berlin to the local occupation authorities, which noted that the cohabitation of German soldiers with Russian women was becoming catastrophic, and therefore recommended that when settling, at least 3 German soldiers should be placed in one room to monitor each other's moral character. Violation of the prohibition, however, was commonplace. Young and pretty women became a desirable target. In those years, German soldiers went to war as if on safari, where everyone could realize their criminal fantasies. Here are a few reports from the Soviet Inform Bureau. The city of Lvov. Drunken German soldiers took young women to Kosciuszko Park. Them. Schoolgirl Lida Petrenko, one by 7 tankers. The village of Puchki, Moscow region. Collective farmer Ivan Terekin was walking down the street with his wife Polina. Several German soldiers grabbed Polina and in front of her husband alternately and then killed her. Ivan, who tried to protect his wife, was shot dead. There were many such stories during World War II. This is only a small part of the horror that women endured during the occupation. World War II crippled millions of lives and destinies, separated hundreds of thousands of families, and destroyed tens of millions of people. It was extremely difficult for women during the war, although they were much less than men, but it was women who suffered all the hardship and pain of that time. At the most modest calculations, during the Second World War in the Red Army was involved in the order of 100,000 representatives of the fair sex, of which more than 13,000 passed German captivity. I decided to study this story more carefully, but all in order. In his memoirs, Officer Bruno Schneider told what kind of instruction German soldiers were given before being sent to the Eastern Front. With regard to female Red Army soldiers, the order was one thing: shoot. In many German units, this was done. Among the dead in the battles and encirclement were found a huge number of bodies of women in Red Army uniform. Among them, a lot of nurses. The marks on their bodies testified that they were first mocked and then shot. The Nazis wrote in their reports that Soviet women had the fortitude, courage, and patience that most men did not have. Under torture, they did not break, but only kept silent, which made the German invaders even more furious. Nurses and orderlies were equated by the Germans with partisans. There was no leniency for them. In the book by Svetlana Alexievich, "The War Does Not Have a Woman's Face," there is a quote from military doctor Alexandra Zaitseva. "We had a nurse captured. A day later, when we beat back that village, there were dead horses, motorcycles, armored personnel carriers lying everywhere. When the nurse was found, it was too late. She had been abused. She was 19 years old." Here are the memories of the German tanker Hans Rudolf about the winter of 1942. Russian nurses were lying on the roads. They had been shot and thrown on the road. They lay naked. On these dead bodies were written vulgar inscriptions. German historians Sönke Neitzel and Harald Welser, in their book Soldiers of the Wehrmacht, proved that such things were not uncommon on the Eastern Front, and that German soldiers and officers bragged about such victories among themselves. Largely, because of such brutality, the women who fought in the Red Army fought to the death. Many carried with them 2 extra cartridges, intended for themselves, so as not to surrender alive in any case. The captured Soviet women were supposed to be sorted. The weakest, most wounded and emaciated were to be destroyed. The rest were used for the hardest labor in the concentration camps. Often, the minimum sanitary conditions for women prisoners of war did not even exist in the camps. No soap, no underwear, no water. When in February 1944, 60 women refused to work at the Heinkel aircraft factory, the camp commandant ordered that they be stripped down to their shirts and lined up in the cold without shoes. Those who agreed to work were promised a warm bed. No one agreed. 2 young women soon died of pneumonia. In addition, many female prisoners of war in concentration camps remained childless because they were subjected to forced sterilization. Women Red Army soldiers had it much worse than men in captivity. German soldiers committed crimes against them every day. There is information about a captured female major who went through all the abuse in the Stuttgart camp and finally spat in the face of a German officer. She was sent to the gas chamber. In concentration camps, the authorities often chose the most attractive women from the prison population and took them to serve as servants. For example, this was done by Camp Dr. Orland in the prisoner of war camp Spalaj, near the city of Kremenchug. The horrors that the surviving Soviet female prisoners had to go through were not the end. The prisoners of Ravensbrück camp recalled that the Soviet soldiers who liberated them on April 30, 1945, looked at them as traitors, apparently believing and condemning that they had served and given themselves to the Germans for the sake of survival. And this was not the least injustice. Women who had been in captivity were supposed to undergo Soviet filtration camps and inspections. For many, captivity remained a stigma, a dark stain on their entire biography. These women said that they were ashamed and afraid to remember this time again. However, it must be done so that it will not be repeated in the future. I would like to familiarize you with the archival testimony of a woman, Lydia, who was captured in 1942. She was taken to Buchenwald concentration camp and spent 3 years there. The woman saw the suffering of the women who were thrown into the gas chambers. Lydia said that this truth should not be hidden. Everyone should know what these women experienced, what they felt with their own bodies. Only then will people be able to appreciate peace and freedom. We were just slaves, laborers, servants. We were beaten time and again, forced to labor to exhaustion. No help was given. If you got sick, you died. Our senses were so dulled that we could not even feel hunger or thirst. But the worst thing is that we will never be able to forget the ordeal we had to endure. That concludes my video. I hope it was educational for you. Subscribe to my channel, like and share this video with your friends. See you soon.